Hey everyone, thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Danielle from Study All Night, and I have Laurah Jurca here with us tonight for an awesome webinar on the Paperless Project. So tonight's going to be jam-packed with tips and strategies. They're going to be especially great for teachers that are going to be going paperless for the first time this coming school year, and possibly for those that have already been paperless. You'll pick up some really great ideas tonight. So I'm going to turn it over to Laurah. I'm going to change presenters, and she's going to take over. Okay, Laurah, you're on.
There we go. All right. Hello, everybody. I am so excited to be with you guys tonight to talk to you about the Paperless Project. I have some tips to help you take it to the next level as you get started with paperless or as you continue with paperless. So without further ado, I'll give you a little bit of information about myself. I am Laurah Jurca. I have a Master of Science in ESL and Foreign Language Education from the University of Tennessee in Knoxville. And I am an elementary ESOL coach by day, which means that I work for my district ESOL office, and I'm assigned several schools a year to work with, and I get to visit with teachers, I get to observe them and provide feedback, I get to assist with planning and providing resources. I've also been a presenter at WIDA, TESOL, and the MDK conference. And I am also a Google Certified Educator Level 1 and 2 and a Google Certified Education Trainer as well. The first thing that I would like to know from you guys tonight is, where are you on your paperless journey? So for those of you that are signed into the Nearpod, you can answer right on your screen. All right, excellent. So for those of you that have answered, it looks like most of you are either just getting started with being paperless, or some of you have not gone paperless yet, but you want to be prepared for that. So hopefully the tips that I can provide for you in this webinar will help you as you get started with that. So the first tip that I have for you guys tonight is that routines are key. When you get started with tech, you need to have routines in place. You need to have a plan. That doesn't mean that the plan that you have can't be flexible and willing to change as you learn new things, but you need to go into it with a plan in place to begin with. And you need to begin teaching the routines and expectations that surround your plan, beginning with day one. One thing I often recommend to teachers is to have a student who's the tech manager at each table. Sometimes it can get really chaotic if all 20 or 25 students in your classroom are retrieving or returning devices at the same time. But if you have one person at each student table or in each student group who can take up those devices or pick up those devices when it's time to hand them out, that can lessen the chaos a little bit for you. Another thing I recommend is to make sure that students are always using the same device. That way, if you have issues, if something gets broken, if a device gets abused, if somebody's doing something with a device that they shouldn't do, then it's easier to keep track of that if the same student is always using the same device. As you put your routines into place for the classroom, some of the things that you want to consider are: when and where will the devices be charged? I know some schools provide those lovely carts, and other schools just hand you a pile of devices and charge cords, and you have to figure it out on your own. So if you don't end up with one of those fancy carts or charging stations, you really need to consider how you're going to organize the devices and where they're going to be stored when they're charging. Another thing to consider is, what do you want students to do with devices in between digital activities? There are going to be some times where you want students to close the device, to turn off the device, to put the device away so that they can listen to what's going on in class, so that they can work with classmates. So what will they do during those times? Will they put them in a basket under their desk? Will they put them in a basket in the middle of the table? Will they slide them into their desk? Something to keep in mind. Another thing, and this kind of goes back to having the tech manager, is how will you manage the retrieval and return of devices? Do you want to have one student from each table doing it? Maybe you want each student to be responsible for putting their own device away, so maybe you do a group or a table at a time. Anything that you can do to reduce chaos during that time is helpful. Another thing that you want to ask yourself is, how can I keep track of the devices that need updates or repairs? Because it's going to happen. Technology is changing quickly, and so updates are coming very, very quickly as well. So what you want to do is devise a system that helps you keep track of which devices need updates and repairs. I've seen primary teachers do this with something as simple as a sticky note stuck to the outside of the device so that they can quickly look and see which devices need an update, and then when they have time they can go pull those devices and look for what needs to be done. Another option is to have students fill out a Google form telling you that their device needs an update, and if they're old enough they can tell you what kind of update. Another option is to have just a paper log in the classroom that students fill in and say, my device needs an update. However you want to keep track of it, it's important to keep track of it, to have something in place for that. Another thing that you want to consider is what constitutes improper use of a device. One of the things that we learned in our school district, we have a lot of students from other countries who speak other languages, and some of our teachers recently learned that our firewall only works when the search phrase is in English. If they search in any of those other languages, all manner of things come up that are not caught by the firewall. So what constitutes improper use in your classroom? Is it a student playing a game instead of doing what they're supposed to be doing? Is it inappropriate searches? You need to come up with a list of things that constitute improper use in the classroom, and then you need to consider what are the consequences for improper use. Consequences often, at least with the teachers that I've worked with, it often involves the student losing the use of the device for a day or a week, depending on how major and how frequent the infractions are. Of course, with that, that means you have to have another alternative activity on hand for the students to use. So the next thing that I would like to do is I would like to ask you guys, I saw some of you said that you had been paperless for a while, others of you are just getting started. What kinds of rules and routines do you currently have in place? And if you're one of those people who's been paperless for a while, what routines or tips do you find essential in your classroom? So I'll give you guys a moment to type in your answers, and I will go and check and see if there are any questions in the Facebook group. Okay. I don't see that anybody is, I see a couple of people have answered that they're just not one-to-one yet, and I don't see anybody who says that they've been paperless for a while chiming in with a tip. So I will go ahead and move on to the next tip, which is choose tools that work for you and your students. There's a lot of things to consider when choosing tools, but you especially want to consider what technology is available for you to use at school, what kinds of devices do you have, and what kind of technology is available at home. That's an especially important consideration if you're like me and you live in a district where a lot of our students are on the free and reduced meals and they don't have access to technology at home, at least in terms of a computer or internet access. But we have found that most of our students, their parents have smartphones now. And most of them are more than willing to download a free app and hand the phone over to their student for 20 or 30 minutes in the afternoon to do some schoolwork. So I like to look for things that we can use both on the devices that we have at home and then also have free, or that we have at school, and then also have free Android and iOS apps that the parents can access on a smartphone. Another thing to consider is the fewer logins, the better. I have found that when students have a lot of logins to remember, they're far more likely to forget either their username or their password, and you end up having to keep a long list or a long Rolodex full of all of these different logins. I really prefer websites and apps that either don't require a login for students to use or that are tied into something that they're already using, such as those that students can use to sign in with their Google account or their Microsoft 360 account. I find it just makes things a whole lot easier. So I tend to look for solutions that require minimal login. Another thing to consider is the tool that you're choosing, is it related to your curricular goals? Is it appropriate for students? Is it authentic? Are they doing tasks that they would be expected to do in career and college, or are they doing tasks like playing games? And that's what I mean by authentic. And I'll go into a little bit more detail about authentic later on. Another thing to consider is this tool right for the job? And on that note, I would like to say I really love educational games. I think students can learn a lot from games, but I do not think games should be the only thing that we are doing with our students with technology. I see a lot of teachers, that's their definition of technology infusion, and I don't think that those are authentic tools that our students, that will help our students as they learn to use technology and as they move into a far more technological society than I'm sure we can even begin to imagine. So for those of you, maybe you're not one-to-one, but maybe you're incorporating some tools here and there as you get the availability for devices. So what are some of your favorite tools to use right now, and what kinds of tools would you be interested in learning more about? And for those of you that are signed into the Nearpod, you can answer right on your screen. Ooh, I see somebody says that they love Seesaw for their students. I haven't used Seesaw yet. I've heard a lot of really good things about it, and I'm thinking that that's something that I need to do some more investigating. As you can tell, one of the things I'm newly beginning to learn is Nearpod, and I'm really excited about this because I've just started using it, and this is my first time using it for professional development, and I think it's pretty cool so far. I see some folks saying that they use Smartboard, Chromebooks, and iPads. I never was able to have a Smartboard in my classroom, so that's unfortunately one piece of technology that I've never really gotten to spend a lot of time playing around with. All right, so the third tip that I would like to share with you guys, especially those of you who are just getting started in the paperless journey, is to remember one thing at a time. If you are trying to incorporate too many tools, oh, I see Danielle chimed in. She likes Google Keep. I love Google Keep too, Danielle. I think it's one of the best tools out there, and it really helps me keep organized. For those of you who are at Google schools, if you don't know about Google Keep, you should check it out. So back to one thing at a time. I think it's really important that we're not overwhelming our students with all of these cool and wonderful tools that are out there. I think it's important to kind of prioritize the tools based on the way that you're going to use them, how frequently you're going to use them, and implement one tool at a time, starting with the one that you'll use most frequently. Wait till students are really good and comfortable before introducing another tool. And sometimes that means you're going to have to teach the little things. One of the things that I see come up in the group frequently is that students have trouble dragging and dropping the tiles. And that's just one of those things that we have to practice, practice, practice with students until they get it. They have to click on it first, then drag it. Many tools are like this. They have little things that students need to learn. So we need to give them that time to learn before we introduce another tool. So maybe you get a group that's already good and comfortable with Google Classroom, and you don't have to spend much time on that. The next tool that you introduce, you might have to spend a whole lot more time on because it's a new tool for them. So just kind of feedback off of your students and find out where they are with each tool as you introduce it. Let them get comfortable with it before you move on to the next tool. Another thing that I think is really important is to cultivate an attitude of we're all learning this together. Even as techie as I am no genius. There are things that I still have to learn. Sometimes it takes me time to learn something new. And I think if we cultivate that sort of attitude within our classroom, we'll all have a much better technology experience. So one thing that I recommend is to have a tech guru in each student group. This is probably going to be a different student than your tech manager. Your tech manager would be responsible for taking the devices back and putting them on the charger. Your tech guru would be a student who's a little bit more tech savvy and who's very comfortable figuring out how to do things and showing their classmates how to do things. Another thing that I used to do when I was in the classroom is have a techspert in each class. And the techspert is someone who can set up the technology in the classroom, who can make sure that all the devices are plugged in and charging and ready to go for the next day, who can set up the projector and hook it to a computer, or who can run the smart board. I found this came in really handy. When I taught middle school in North Carolina, I would go each year to Busan, Korea for about 2 weeks in January to lead teacher development over there. And I hated to just leave my students boring, busy work and worksheets to do. I wanted them to be able to use the technology. I wanted the teacher to be able to teach using the PowerPoints and the materials that I left behind. So I found that having a techspert in each student group who came in each day and set up the technology for the teacher really made a big difference in what my students were able to do while I was not there, as well as what we were able to accomplish in class each day. Another piece of advice is to embrace mistakes as chances to learn. Sometimes you're going to put something up there, like for example a Padlet. You're going to want students to post to a Padlet, and they're going to go out there and they're going to say, "Miss, I can't post to the Padlet." And you're going to check and you're going to find out that you forgot to turn on posting or something like that. Everybody makes mistakes with technology. If we just embrace it as a chance to kind of laugh at ourselves and learn what we did wrong so that we can do better, then that creates a much better attitude in the classroom. Another piece of advice is to create self-help resources with videos, with screenshots, with moving GIFs to help your students find information on their own. I went to the Florida Educational Technology Conference back in January, and in one of the sessions that I was in, one of the presenters said that we need to not be teaching students how to use specific technology, such as Google or Microsoft, but we need to be teaching them how to learn technology. And that really kind of resonated with me because we all know somebody who seems to be able to figure out any piece of technology that's thrown at them, any new program, any new website, any new app. They just seem to be able to latch onto it and go. And then there's others who really struggle with that. And I think it's the difference between learning how to learn technology and being taught specific technologies. So if we can equip our students to be prepared to find answers on their own, to figure out how to do things with technology on their own, by providing them with self-help resources, then I think we're empowering them to tackle technology in a different way. Tip number 5 is to always have a backup plan. And I think any teacher who used technology at any time in the classroom can attest to this. There will be times where your principal walks into your classroom to do an observation, and you have this wonderful technologically integrated lesson planned, and bam, the Wi-Fi is down in the whole building. You need to have a backup plan for that. Otherwise, you're up the creek and you have nothing else for the students to do. So always, 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 even if you're in a paperless classroom, I definitely recommend having a paper-based backup on file for each skill so that you can pull it out and be ready to go if your technology plan falls through. You want to consider contingencies for students who are on device restriction because they haven't been using technology appropriately. Sometimes a student will put away a broken device and not tell you until the next day when they pull it out to use it that it's broken. So you need to have a contingency for something for that student to do as well. In my district, our Wi-Fi goes down quite frequently, so we always have to have a contingency plan for if the Wi-Fi goes down. Another thing that especially my teachers who are in specialty areas like ESOL or special ed, they often come in and find that devices that they thought they were going to be able to use that day are gone for testing. So you never know what's going to happen, whether the technology is going to fail or whether something else in the building is going on that's going to take your technology away from you. But if you have a backup plan, then you will be prepared. Tip number 6 is especially important to me. I think it's important to make the technology use that we do meaningful. I talked earlier about games, and yes, don't get me wrong, I think games can make a great addition to learning and can make a great learning tool, but I don't think that that's all that our students should be doing. And by that, I mean that it's important that technology integration is purposeful. It should be connected to the curricular goals that we have set for our students for that lesson or that unit or that week or whatever. It needs to be well planned. You need to have thought out everything, and that goes back to having that backup plan and having those routines in place for students to use. The technology use that we integrate should be engaging for students, and again, it should be authentic. They should be doing the types of things that they are going to do when they get into the college and career world, which means they need to be able to use technology in practical ways. One of the best models of technology integration that's out there, I'm sure many of you have already heard of it. This is from Dr. Ruben Pintadura, and I have a link in my credits at the end that I will show you guys. But he came up with the SAMR model, and it's sort of like a taxonomy for educational technology integration. So at the bottom levels, the technology doesn't really do much except enhance the way that the student is learning. At the upper levels, it really transforms the way that the student is learning and transforms the lesson for your student. Here's a really great image from Sylvia Duckworth about the use of the SAMR model, and I really love this one because this one shows how the use of technology can allow you to dive a lot deeper than you may have otherwise. So with no tech, he's standing on the shore. By the time he's fully technologically integrated, he's able to be much deeper in the ocean than he could be before. He's able to use fancy sensors in his submarine to gather information that he couldn't before. So I really like this image from Sylvia Duckworth about the SAMR model for technology integration. So here's a little bit of an example. For substitution, at the very bottom level of technology integration, you take a classroom product that you would have done with pen and paper and you create it with technology instead. So with no technology, we might be writing a report by hand or with a typewriter, heaven forbid. I guess that's technology too, though, huh? With technology, we're typing a report. We're making it, so yeah, I guess the typewriter would be the technology side. So we're typing a report. There's no real addition to the learning process. There's really only an addition to the way that you are disseminating the information. And I think it's important to note that while we want to strive for the higher levels of SAMR integration, Sometimes you have to start at the bottom with students. If your students don't know how to type, then you're going to need to start at this substitution level, and that's okay. But we want to be working ourselves and our students up to those higher levels of technology integration. So with augmentation, a classroom product that you could have done with pen and paper is created with technology, but the use of technology adds a functional improvement over doing it by hand. So when we're just writing a report by hand, we don't have anything except the pencil and paper. If we're using technology such as a word processor, then we have tools like spell check, grammar check, electronic dictionary, electronic thesaurus, and that enhances our ability to write that report. But it doesn't really change the way that we are gathering the information or the learning that we're doing. When we move up to the transformation side of this, at modification, the technology allows us to redesign the assignment, and a lot of work is done using that technology. So instead of writing a report by hand, we might be creating a newsletter using digital images instead. Something a little bit more interesting. They could be creating a PowerPoint sharing the information that they had. At the highest level, which is redefinition, technology really transforms the assignment. It transforms the way that we're learning and gathering information. It transforms the products that we're creating, and we're able to do things that were previously inconceivable. Instead of writing a report, we're creating an animation, we're producing a film, we're recording a video. The learning process is still much the same. The student is still having to gather information and write it up into a format, but the way that we're changing the way that they are processing and synthesizing that information and allowing them to create something new with it. This is a digital checklist. This is from the HyperDocs girls, and you can see I have in here a link down at the bottom from where I got this. They have it available to freely download, and you can download this from your computer screen right now if you guys are on the Nearpod. But I really like this because it puts SAMR right next to Webb's depth of knowledge and allows you to ensure that you're reaching the higher levels of both with your technology integration. So if you would like to download that, there should be a little download button right up here in the corner of your screen, and you can download that. That's freely available from the HyperDocs girls. They have a great website that has lots of great advice about crafting digital lessons. I highly recommend it. Tip number 7 is I would like for you guys to consider including the 4 C's in your digital lessons as you're creating them. And the 4 C's are communication, collaboration, creation, and critical thinking. And these are skills that have been determined that students need to use in the college and career world. And I'm sure that you can think of multiple times a day where you use each of these skills. And the more of these skills that we're able to incorporate into a digital lesson, the higher you can reach on those levels of SAMR. And the next document that I have for you here is a document that I created myself. You can also download this. Again, there's a little download button right up here. And this is a 4 C's toolbox. So I sat down and I created this little grid, and I listed each of those 4 C's: communication, critical thinking, collaboration, and creation. And then I created a list of each of the tools that I use and enjoy that could fall into each of these categories. So I encourage you guys to download that, and as you're crafting your digital lessons and thinking about which tools you want to incorporate, like we talked about in tip 2, and as you're thinking about how you can incorporate those 4 C's, think about these different tools that are listed here for each of those and how you can incorporate those into your classroom. So in order to provide our students with authentic opportunities to use those 4 C's, collaboration, creation, communication, critical thinking, I would like for you to think, how do you use those in your daily life as a teacher, and how do you think our students will be using them in their college and career lives? So if you're on the Nearpod, you can take a minute and go ahead and answer that. and I will pop over to Facebook and see if any questions have popped up. Hi, Claudio. I see your question about an AUP. I'm not sure what AUP stands for. Could you clarify? And then I will address that at the end. So someone said that we're always collaborating with our team. We're always finding new ways to teach the content with creativity. We're always, especially those of us who are TPTers, we're always creating new things to take learning to new heights for our students. So absolutely. Someone said that these are critical skills for career readiness. I could not agree more. And they said that they improve your classroom culture as well. Ooh, and I like this response. Authentic writing experience, authentic audience, project-based learning that are problem instead of just project. I really like that because, again, that goes back to what I've been saying about providing our students with opportunities to use technology in authentic ways. We want them to be finding information. We want them to be collaborating with peers in ways that will benefit them in the future. Absolutely. Great answers. So tip number 8 that I have for you guys is keep learning. Like I said before, technology is constantly changing, and if you ever think that you've got it mastered, then you're going to get behind very, very quickly. So it's really important that we always keep learning. Some of my favorite ways to do this are first you need to have a professional learning community or a personal learning community, whichever P you like to use for the P and PLC. But you need to have a learning community around you. And one of my favorite ways to do this is Twitter. I have learned so many great things about so many different topics in education from Twitter chats. And I'm going to do a little shout out. The ESL Nexus and I do, during the school year, we do a once monthly Twitter chat about educational technology for English language learners. There are tons of other ed tech chats out there. There are chats for just about any content area that you can think of. So if you're not on Twitter and you're not using that as a learning community, then you are really missing out on some great information and opportunities. Another thing is Facebook groups. There are lots of great Facebook groups out there where you can collaborate and create and do lots of things for just about any topic in education. I'm part of so many great teacher groups. Also, joining a Google Educator group. Even if you're not a Google certified educator, you can still find a Google Educator group in your area to connect with other teachers who are using Google in the classroom. You can find out about workshops and seminars and things like that that are also happening in your area. Another great thing to do is to get your team involved or get your school involved and do a school-based book study. Find a great book about Google Classroom or about HyperDocs or about using technology with English language learners and do a book study and implement the things that you learn from that with your teammates or with other colleagues at your school. And of course, always attend workshops, attend webinars, attend conferences. Technology is just changing so rapidly that you really can't get away from it for too long or things are going to change on you. And the last tip that I have for you guys tonight is when in doubt, Google it. Always, always, always. If you come up with something that you don't know how to do or you can't figure it out, then Google it because 99% of the time you will find the answer that you are looking for out there. After you Google it, if you don't find what you're looking for, see if you can find the support community or forum for whatever tool that you're using. Tools like Padlet, tools like Nearpod, tools like Google, all have a great community support forum where you can get advice from other users or from people who work for the company. A lot of times that Google search that you do will lead you to that support forum or support community. And I think this goes back to, again, we want to teach our students how to learn to use technology, which means empowering them to find answers on their own and not give up. We need to set that example as teachers. When we come up with something that we can't do, that's okay. It's okay to say, I don't know how to do this, but we need to use the tools that are at our disposal. I'm sorry. Use the tools that are at our disposal to find the information that we need to solve the problem. Another thing that you can do is check YouTube for a video. On YouTube, there are thousands of videos out there that can teach you to do just about anything with technology, or anything really that you want to learn how to do. If you want to learn how to cut your own bangs, there's a tutorial for that. So you can definitely find one for how to use Google Classroom, or how to share a YouTube video on a channel with someone. Whatever you want to learn how to do, it's out there. So the last question that I have is a reflection question. I would like you guys to think about, given the information that I've shared with you tonight, especially if you're going paperless soon, or as you think about going paperless, what are your next steps? How will you implement what we've talked about tonight? And if you have any questions still, this is a great opportunity for you guys to share those questions. All you need to do is go into the Nearpod and you can type in your question and it'll appear right here on my screen. And I'll also check the Facebook group too. So someone said that their next steps are to continue to find authentic ways for students to share knowledge and understanding. And I would also add to that, find authentic ways for them to acquire information. There's lots of great informational websites out there that are specifically designed for students. And I think we really need to be teaching them how to find information and how to find credible information and find it safely on the web also. Someone said, I want my students to communicate with each other more, not just send me their work digitally. If I'm the only one seeing it, that's not much better than pencil and paper. I absolutely agree. I think our students need to be not only communicating with each other more, but sharing their work more. And that goes, again, into finding tools from those 4 C's that work for your students. One of my favorite tools to use right now for that communication piece is Flipgrid. I love to have my students record a video of them explaining a concept or sharing an opinion or something like that, and then they post it in the Flipgrid. Other students can watch each other's videos, they can vote for each other's videos, and for me that's especially important because for English language learners we want them to practice those speaking and listening skills as well as their reading and writing skills. So yeah, absolutely. If they're just sending you work digitally and you're the only one seeing it, you're right, it's not much better than pencil and paper. Another thing that you could do is use Google Sites to share some of that student work, or I think Seesaw allows you to share that work with parents as well. So absolutely, great answer. Danielle, were there any other questions?
Okay, I unmuted my microphone. So,
Okay.
Laura, do you have any more slides you want to show tonight?
Nope, that's it. I just have my thank you slide and my credits slide.
Oh, how wonderful. Okay. I highly recommend everyone Google Sylvia Duckworth. She's really cool. A lot of beautiful sketch notes, really cool. I mean, you could look at them for hours. Like when you Google her and you look at all her images, they're so much fun. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to change the presenter.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to come back on screen with you and just talk about real quick. The one question I saw in the Google group was about the AUP, and someone responded with what they think it could mean. I think it was a Taylor. Yeah, Turner Lang, I believe, said it was authorized user protocol, possibly.
Okay. I'm not really sure I'm understanding the question there.
Okay, so this is what I think. I think, because as educators, it's partially our job to figure out what everybody means, right? So I believe what Claudia means is like, shouldn't the district already have a policy in place, or do you believe it's up to the individual classroom teacher to come up with their own policies?
Oh, acceptable use policy. Yes,
Okay.
a lot of districts do have an acceptable use policy in place. Not all of those are very specific. Some districts have a really specific policy in place about how students should be able to use those devices. Some of them are very vague, and it comes down to the teacher to decide what constitutes improper use. And I think sometimes you have to go beyond what's improper use as far as the district says, because they're going to be focusing more on students searching inappropriate materials, sharing inappropriate materials. But if I have a student who is consistently using a game when they're supposed to be paying attention in the classroom, then in my classroom, that's improper use. And there need to be some consequences in place to help that student, um, help them cultivate their motivation to stay on top. And if that means taking the device away for a day and you do paper and pencil work while the other students do the normal work we're going to do on the device, that can be a very powerful motivator sometimes.
One time a child like, I can't close the screen. I can't close the screen because it was really inappropriate what was on the screen. And I
Mhm.
was like putting my hands like over the screen doing that because all the kids are like, "What's he looking at? What's he looking at?" And I quickly, because he wouldn't close the screen, and I couldn't push him out of the way because you're not supposed to do that. I
Mhm.
took the cord and I just ripped it out of the wall. That was like the last resort, right? And then he was banned for a while.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I know.
Um,
I don't know. They know all these little tricks to get past the firewalls and you know the backdoor websites,
well, and like I said,
whatever.
in my county, the firewall only works if they're searching terms in English. If they're searching terms in one of the other 149 languages students in my district speak, then the firewall's not going to catch that. And there, we've had some teachers have some very awkward situations with fifth and sixth and seventh grade boys getting around the firewall by using terms in Spanish or Portuguese or whatever their native language is.
There's so much effort, right? Could you imagine if they put the effort into their work?
Exactly, right? Well,
Right.
and,
So
and probably a lot of the American kids are learning inappropriate terms in Spanish just so they can get around the firewall too. So,
I'm pretty sure my first experience with learning Spanish were also very inappropriate words.
usually, yeah.
Yeah, I remember that. I could tell you what those words are right now, but I won't. But I loved when you talked about the four C's, and what, which one do you believe is the one you focus on the most? Like, which one do you think you're the strongest with?
Probably because of my background with English language learners, we focus a lot on communication, and I have my students do a lot of activities that involve communicating with one another. Flipgrid is one that I really love because students can. Flipgrid is they used to be paid only, but now they have a free account that teachers can use that allows you to have one grid, and you can post as many topics on that grid as you want and get as many responses as you want. the free version doesn't have all the bells and whistles, of course, but students can record themselves talking about a topic, explaining something they've done, telling a story, answering a question. I mean, you name it, they can record a video of themselves doing that, and then it posts on the grid. The teacher can go
Okay.
back later and view that video. The teacher can also allow students to view each other's videos so that they can also get that listening practice of listening to their classmates. I really love Padlet for written, sort of brief written communication because it's free. It doesn't require a login. Neither does Flipgrid. Flipgrid does not require the students to have a login either, which is really nice.
That's awesome.
Yeah, exactly. The fewer logins, the better. So Padlet, I love that for written communication. Students can also put up a picture there or something like that. But I think communication is the one that I kind of excel in, and sometimes I really have to think about how I'm incorporating the others as well.
So which one do you think you're the weakest in? Like which one do you have to focus more on? How's that?
I think it goes back and forth between that creation piece due to time. I don't always have, especially, and a lot of ESOL teachers, they don't really have the amount of time with their students that they would like to be able to film a video or something like that. We don't have the same amount of time that a classroom teacher has. So I think getting that creation piece in without it taking 2 or 3 weeks can be a challenge for me. And also sometimes that critical thinking piece, because I have to find creative ways for my students to express their critical thinking if they're at low levels of English language proficiency. And sometimes that's easier done with traditional activities than with digital activities.
That's so true, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and somebody asked about being able, I saw somebody asked about being able to re-download those. I have it set right now where you should be able to download the 4Cs toolbox. I'll leave it there for a minute, and then before we close out, I'll go back to the other one as well so that you guys can download that.
Okay, now you're going to put that in your Nearpod presentation?
It is in the Nearpod presentation, yeah.
Okay.
And if they're still signed in, that's the page that I've got it on now, and in just a minute I'll go back to the first document.
Okay. Here's one from me. I want to know if you would I would love it, and I'm sure everybody else would. Would you be willing to host a Twitter chat this summer and not in the school year? Can you do one maybe back to school in August?
We're going to start back in August. We are going to start back in August.
Okay, and you'll post those.
Yes, I'll post that information. I'll share that with the Google group as well. We just found attendance was low in the summertime, and we decided we want a break too. So we will start back with that in August. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Okay, and I believe you did cover about the sharing the videos with one another and the documents in Nearpod. Okay. This has been great. I'm going through the questions just to make sure we didn't miss anything. Okay, this was fabulous. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm so glad everybody came. And of course, anybody can tag me in the Facebook group if they have additional questions as well. I know sometimes you have to think about things a little bit before you really realize what questions you want to ask. So if you're thinking about it, you're marinating on the information, and you come up with a question, feel free to message me in the Google group.
Okay, thank you so much. And so that's it from us for tonight. But like Laura said, she'll go back into the closed group. She'll answer questions and you know, give her a tag, and she'll get back to you. All right. So thank you, everybody. Have a great night. And Laura, after we sign off, just stick around so I can talk to you for a minute. Okay. Good night, everyone.